4 konuşmacımız var. Moderatörümüzle birlikte Uluslararası Bakış Açısıyla Türkiye'de Yatırımcı İlişkileri Tecrübe Paylaşımlarının panelini yönetmek üzere moderatörümüzü ilk olarak sahneye davet etmek istiyorum. TÜYİD Yüksek İstişare Konseyi üyesi ve Deutsche Menkul Değerler İstanbul Genel Müdürü Sayın Albert Crespin bizlerle birlikte. Bir alkış rica ediyorum efendim. Evet, günün sonlarına doğru geliyoruz ama bu paneldeki konuşmacılarımızın özellikle daha güçlü bir alkışa ihtiyaçları var. Zira öğleden sonra konuşma yapmak hiç de kolay değil. Sayın Crespin, I would like to invite to the stage, please. Welcome, Mr. Crespin. Merhaba, hoş geldiniz efendim. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Evet, Sayın IHS Market Avrupa Kurumsal Satış Direktörü Sayın Peter Götke bizlerle birlikteler. TEP Portföy Yönetimi Hisse Senedi Yatırımlarından sorumlu direktör Sayın Burak Öztunç yine bu panelde değerli görüşlerini bizlerle paylaşacaklar. Ve son olarak UBP Hisse Senedi Araştırma Analisti Sayın Özgür Göker'i sahneye davet etmek istiyorum. Son panelimizde kıymetli konuşmacılarımız bizlerle tecrübelerini paylaşacaklar ve moderatörümüz de hazırlanıyorlar yavaş yavaş. Biraz sonra kendilerine sözü bırakacağım. 45 dakika içerisinde olabildiğince tecrübelerini, engin tecrübelerini ve deneyimlerini bizlerle paylaşacaklar. Çok teşekkürler efendim. Bir kez daha hoş geldiniz. Ben yavaş yavaş sözü de size bırakayım. Efendim günün sonunda elbette böyle bir evet, elbette oluyor. Çok haklı olarak. Çok da yoğun bir session'ın arkasından sizlerle birlikteyiz. Tekrar hoş geldiniz diyorum. Buyurunuz efendim, söz sizin. Sanıyorum gelmiyor. Bir iki deneme daha eğer yapabilirsek arkadaşlarımız açılacaktır. Evet, bir kez daha deneyebilir miyiz? Sesinizi duyabilir miyiz? Gelmiyor. Evet, gelmiyor efendim. Ben hemen bir el mikrofonu, yok. El mikrofonuyla yardımcı olayım size.
Merhabalar, hoş geldiniz. Bu bütün gün programlarında I'll start a bit Turkish, then we'll switch to English later on, if I may. Böyle bütün gün programlarda bu aslında çok yaşadığımız bir şey. Yani ben de CFA başkanı olarak veya kendi kurumumda da Deutsche'de yaptığımız etkinliklerde oluyor. Sermaye Piyasası Birliği bunun çözümünü buldu. Geçen seneki kongrede en sona bir futbol paneli koymuştu. Ben onu hatırlatmış olayım. Belki bir sonraki yılda ona benzer bir şeyler değerlendirilebilir. Tamam. Yani bu yok, yine hoş geldiniz tekrar. Oldukça kalabalık. Salon çok geniş olduğu için böyle gözüküyor. Tabii o da var yani ama yapacak bir şey yok yani. Bugün ben çok kısa bir Türkçe girizgah yapıp daha sonra İngilizceye döneceğim. IHS Market'ten Peter burada olduğu için öyleyse daha kolay olacak diye düşündük beraber değerlendirirken. Şimdi bugün yatırımcı ilişkilerine uluslararası bakışı pratisyenlerin ağzından, practitioner'ın ağzından konuşacağız. Birçok gelişme oldu. Çok değerli konuklarım var bu arada. Son dönemde investor relations'ı etkileyen, ben de sonuçta sell side'dan gelen bir insan olduğum için bizi de çok etkileyen açıkçası birçok gelişme var. Bu gelişmelerin IR tarafındaki yansımalarını beraber değerlendireceğiz ve bu pratikleri konuşacağız. Sorularınızı biriktirin. Bir 5-10 dakika sona bırakmaya çalışacağız. Bana bir timer koyarsanız da sevinirim aslında. Ya da hatırlatırsınız zamanı. Well, I'm switching to English now. Thank you all for coming to hear the stories from our distinguished guests. I have Peter Götke from IHS Market. So he's the executive director for European corporate sales. Burak Öztunç from TEB Asset Management, head of equities. And Özgür from UBP, Özgür Göker, he's an equity research analyst. I think, you know, as I said, I will be the moderator, but I may add my input, when it fits. I am also a sell-side broker. I'm running Deutsche Securities Menkul Değerler in Turkey, but things have changed over the recent years significantly. Now we will try to deep dive on what has changed from an investor relations perspective and from an international investor's perspective in Turkey. And I will first ask all panelists to share let's do a quick run on what has changed over the past 3-4 years. What sort of different dynamics you've observed comparing 5 years ago to today. Maybe Özgür, we can start from you and run a quick tour, then we will have other items to discuss. Yeah.
It would be kind of a repetition, but what has changed is, first of all, there are some trends like active funds are not getting larger as relative to the passive funds, but what we see is that the responsible investment approach is increasing rapidly, what we have seen. I brought some numbers like the signatories of United Nations Principles of Responsible Investment is nowadays 2,600 roughly, and the asset under management is roughly around $90 trillion, so it's a huge number. So we can call it ESG investing and so forth, but what I see is that in 1970s, in this seminal work, Milton Friedman clearly stated that the social responsibility of the corporations is to only make profits. But 50 years later, what we see is the corporations are changing their behavior. In August 19, top CEO executives of US has come together in a business roundtable, and they stated that the shareholder is not their only responsibility, the profit. So there are other approaches that they have done. And what we see on the corporation is also reflected on the investment side as well, because at the end of the day, the asset managers are running the money on behalf of their clients, and the clients' perspectives are changing. And what I see is that in a traditional risk-return matrix, we are getting another axis being added, which is ESG, or what you can call sustainability or positive impact. But nevertheless, it's obvious that another axis has been added. So I believe the most important change is the change in the traditional risk-return matrix, adding of another axis, and its impact on the overall investment strategies.
Thank you, Özgür. We'll come to ESG, and I believe we'll spend a lot of time on it, in a little while. Burak, your views, please.
3-4 years, I think this summit itself speaks for itself. I mean, we don't have PM summits. I personally I'm the PM of the BNP Paribas Turkey funds, but this summit is huge, and I see how IR has become a thing in our business, and I appreciate it a lot. The progress of IR is huge. I can speak, say, 90s. I'm with the company since 1999. Back then, no IRs. We were trying to reach the company, just calling them directly. We were trying to get a meeting from C-level most of the time. But now, when I attend all the meetings, when I have only IR, no Cs, it's okay for me. I mean, I really appreciate their knowledge, how they master their companies, how they present their companies. I don't feel I'm missing something, but of course, I have some suggestions. Maybe we can speak it later. But okay. From our point of view, the progress is great.
Okay, so you're content with the progress of the Turkish companies. That's good to know.
I have many friends. Yeah. Some people I know from sell side, and I see how quality they are, so they make a difference.
Yeah, and Peter, while your company provides solution services to many corporates, maybe you can give you know, a European approach and also maybe focus a little bit on Turkey, what has changed? Well, investors' demands from companies over the last few years?
Sure. So we're going to talk about MiFID a bit later, and also we're going to talk about ESG a bit later as well. But I'll make a first observation. I've been to this conference maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I used to live in Dubai, so I covered the region for BNY Mellon from a depository receipt perspective. So we were very engaged with the investor relations community, and the community has grown exponentially in the last few years. But that is a trend across the Middle East. So I still sit on the Middle East Investor Relations Association board. I was there for the board meeting this week and also visited Saudi and their board this week as well. And this is a trend that's growing across the region. So, you know, what's keeping most of the IR societies awake at night in the region generally would be ESG and how they can develop thought leadership around that and educate the companies. But also the use of tools. So without a budget, without an IR budget, it's very hard for a company to work with organizations like the one that Toby and I work for at IHS Markit. So I think that's my core observation. The IR community, as Oscar alluded to as well, is growing month by month. To give you an example, in Saudi, it's gone from 5 people about 18 months ago to about 20 people today, and that's leaving aside Saudi Aramco. Obviously, a similar sort of growth curve took place here in Turkey some time ago. And then I'd also point out the ability for companies here to react. So I think in Q3 there's some statistics showing that North American investment in Turkey fell by about 22% year on year. It's a big drop. But companies in Turkey no longer, you know, choose to ignore that fact. From what I see, they actually choose to explore why, and you know, engage with the investors that are selling. Also increase engagement with those that have large positions to make sure this doesn't become a trend and they reverse the trend very quickly. So I think that engagement with investors in Europe and the US is again a trend we'll discuss more today.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of the statistic. Well, my personal feeling is, you know, the reason for that drop could be for the reasons beyond any, you know, IRs or companies' control, because it could be a top-down or macro-driven thing. Okay, now three of you mentioned about ESG. Now let's try to deep dive into it. Actually, in the CFA curriculum, as well as in the CFA world, it's also quite popular. Actually, it comes with a wider, let's say, definition of responsible investing, as you said, or delivering more value to the society overall. So you really, Özgür mentioned about that risk return matrix. I really want to hear your views. How it is progressing globally, because those big numbers look really big. But you said $90 trillion, but you know the total amount of investments is almost that, right? So, yeah, is this a hype or is this like a misrepresentation of the numbers? And I'm asking three of you, so you can really answer on in your own way, and maybe more importantly. Is the ESG following companies do it for real, or they pretend that they are doing ESG? The same question is true for asset managers. Maybe, you know, Burak can also refer to that as well. So Özgür, from you again, please.
Well, you're right. I mean, the new terminology nowadays is greenwashing. So if you look at the asset under management, the signatories of it is 90 trillion, but how much of it is really dedicated to the ESG fund, that's a question mark. I totally agree on it. At the end of the day, if you read some reports, there is really serious troubles about it, and especially in UK, they are trying to implement new regulations on that. Just to give an example, not to give the name, but in an article that I read, a fund has promoted itself as an ESG fund, a renewable fund, but when they realize it, when they deep dive it, they saw that 95% of the fund is allocated to UK government bonds, and only 5% is allocated to a renewable energy company, and the company is branding itself as a renewable fund. So this is kind of a problem, you're right. But what I see is that inevitably there may be changes, there will be more regulations, but this new metric as axis that I told you in the risk return has been added and will stay there.
So in a way, it's formally in the KPI list. That's how I understand
That's
from
it.
your,
And
yeah. So
also keep in mind that even in a traditional risk return methods, what is the risk? I mean, just to give an example, beta is typically from a sell side as a ex-sell side analyst, what we use beta as a risk metric for the stock. But how do you calculate beta? Is it historical? Is it expected? If it is historical, is it 5 year? Is it 10 year? So even we didn't agree on the risk axis yet. Now we are adding another axis, and probably we will not agree on it quite for some time.
Yeah. Is there any, Burak, maybe you can add, you can share your comments, but maybe answering to this question in addition to it, is there any certification mechanism for, let's say, funds when they claim that they are
I
ESG
think
compliant?
there will be.
Okay.
I know there will be, but in my experience in BNP Paribas Asset Management, a sustainability center has been established. They already started purchasing data from ESG providers, and they come up with a scoring, and they impose it on all the product range. So in a way, now my fund, Turkey fund, is ESG compliant. I cannot invest, that's the real impact. I cannot invest in some companies which are polluting the air right now.
Okay. And
I cannot invest some companies. I had some slides here, maybe if you can do it, I don't know.
Okay, do we have the slides available, which I've sent in the morning? If not,
And BNP is not alone. There is a race in ESG. I know the ESG is coming up all the time. Maybe you may get bored, but I think from a philosophical point of view, it's a blessing for us, I believe. In people in finance, we usually strive for meaning, men's search for meaning, and maybe, I don't know how it's with yourself, from time to time.
You mean purpose, yeah.
Yeah. Individually, am I good? Am I contributing to the world, etc.? And we are in finance is being criticized, but finance is going to be the pioneer in maybe saving our world. So I find a meaning here, and I totally embrace the idea of ESG, and I think you will be doing so as well. That's real. That's real.
Well, and that's a carrot too, you know. In a way, if
that's a great motivation.
If you see the real money shying away from non-ESG corporates or investment vehicles, that's a real carrot.
In particular, in BNP, I see material impact on the investing behavior. So even if you are a good IR, but if you do not comply with ESG criteria, I may not be able to invest in your company. And if we come together, it will be having an impact on your share price eventually. So I would suggest to cooperate, IR people and the PMs, because I have to convince our sustainable center. We have some scores that I really find it difficult to believe, and we have to improve this, maybe hand in hand. And you IR people have to convince your boards or C-levels to take action about that. It's really coming.
That's an interesting comment, because to best of my knowledge, maybe Peter, you may have some regional experience on that. There is an ownership problem too on the ESG matters. You know, somebody has to own it within the company, and while it's a new thing, it's been several years, maybe the IR role might be the right role to start embracing it within a company. So do you see, you know, how do you observe it happening in the companies in your region? ESG ownership.
Sure. So, I mean, in the UK, it is primarily falling on the IR department. There are some companies that have a ESG officer, someone that's now taking it on. I think that's quite nascent. But actually, from the institutional perspective too, I mean, there's a question about, you know, who owns it on the institutional side as well. And more companies are using MSCI or Sustainalytics to produce reports to, give them a rating with regards to their general governance, their ESG. And I think that they're now starting to question the value of these reports. They're spending, a lot of money on sort of compiling these. A lot of time is spent producing it, and then they have to renew it every year. Is that money well spent? So they're coming to firms like us at IHS to get a feel for, and they go and see, institutions on the West Coast, the East Coast, or across Europe. Who are the ESG people? Are there specialists, or is this delegated down to the fund manager? And it's a bit of both, but it is a sort of data set that we do now collect, and I think our clients in Europe generally and more globally are appreciating that.
Well, I personally see that sort of specialization in ESG on the sales side. There are some salespeople who, get into it more and more, and they become being known as the ESG specialist, and it's true for the investors as well. I don't know who owns it in your organization, or maybe it's even better if everyone embraces it.
Yeah. But we have
then
ESG champions in the company.
Okay, yeah.
Those people are being educated by the ESG centers, so they will
The champions,
engage.
the ambassadors, okay.
They will do their stewardship. They will lead the companies, maybe with the help of IR.
So, and do you see Turkey to have an edge there, maybe to attract? Well, because Turkey has a diversified sectoral base in companies and listed companies. Well, maybe Peter, you can also comment, but you all can comment. So, Aramco is an oil company. So, its ESG score, I believe, should be, categorically less than some sectors which Turkey already hosts. So, do you think we have an edge there, that we can attract fresh capital, or if we concentrate on the ESG matters, we being the companies, the listed companies in Turkey, could there be an edge for Turkey? That's the short question.
I believe that there are some good examples, just to conjugate them. For example, Arçelik is in MSCI ESG rating, they have AAA, and as far as I know, the last time I checked, they were one of the 6 companies out of 1,500. So there are some good companies, there are some companies that are producing integrated report, sustainability report, and so forth. What I see is that Turkish companies hesitate to disclose data, but this requires, a good ESG requires disclosure of non-financial data. So unfortunately, why? But some Turkish companies hesitate to disclose some data. Either they thought that it is, not going to be favorable for their competition and so forth, which I don't agree, because in today's world, you can find data easily in anywhere. So just by looking at your annual report or any data in your sustainability report, none of your competitors will take any extra advantage, in my personal view. So there could be more. There are some good examples, but honestly, relative to some other countries that I look at, there are some still ways to go. For example, in South Africa, integrated reporting is a must. So you see, for example, a better ESG score ratings in South Africa versus any other country.
Oh, yeah,
so in Turkey, an overall approach is needed.
So, and in South Africa, is it by regulation required, or is it like a self-imposed rule for?
Actually, it is by regulation. So everybody has to disclose their. It has a history of it, but briefly saying, everybody has to disclose their integrated report, which has a detailed ESG explanation. Okay. So, for example, my suggestion would be, if Turkey wants to get an edge, rather than going like switching from 3G telecom to 4G and 5G, let's say we know that there is 5G, why spend time, extra resources on 4G? Let us skip to the 4G. So rather than Turkish companies disclosing annual report plus sustainable report, I believe it will be waste of resources. They will save more if they focus directly to the integrated reporting.
Okay. Now I want to switch gears a little bit, and I will ask your views on the MiFID and what it brought to companies, IR businesses, etc. from my own personal experience, it had a colossal impact on sell-side, banks, investment banks. My bank, as well as many other banks, they really downsized their research functions, their sales functions, etc. Not primarily on the MiFID, of course. There is also the electronification part. The technology also played a role. But what I felt when I first, started experiencing that impact in the organization that I run, I just felt, the company management and IR people should or would have more responsibility in, attracting investor interest. Now, Peter, I'd like to ask you, maybe also in the region and in Turkey too, how did you observe it? How it is unfolded? Now, the disintermediation, less investment banks, less conferences, etc. Now, IR people assuming that responsibility more and more, and any other solutions that have been provided by any other non-bank companies, maybe digital solutions, etc. I really like to hear your views on that.
No, sure, thank you. So for the last 3 years before I joined IHS very recently, I was working for Deutsche Bank in London. So I got involved with a lot of the MiFID fallout from a Deutsche Bank perspective, but also from the briefing to our clients. So for the larger clients, the large cap clients in the UK and to a large extent in Europe, there wasn't a massive effect, right? There was still a lot of focus on them, a lot of support available. But of course, at mid cap and small cap companies, there was a fundamental change. But I think what I also mentioned, it kind of occurred at the same time as this 11-year trend that's been taking place of the move from active to passive funds, a lot of money moving across. So suddenly the buy side is having to pick where it spends its dollars very, very carefully. And so I think the upshot, and I'm surprised me to hear this, is that the corporates in the UK, FTSE 250, the less sizable ones, have had to become more independent. They've had to build their own solutions, and we've been working with them to try and work out a sort of a roadmap towards that. So part of what we would recommend to those companies in Europe, but also I guess here in Turkey as well, it's kind of a hybrid approach. I mean, you still need to work with the sell side, but don't be afraid of engaging the buy side directly. And I'll give you an anecdote. So before Deutsche Bank, I was at BNY Mellon, and we worked very closely with the asset management boutiques at BNY Mellon. We would bring our clients together for roundtables with the asset managers. And there's one message they would repeat time and time again to the companies was, don't be afraid to reach out to us directly. Right? That was a mantra they would repeat time and time again. So the companies, they listen to this, but their feedback was, we try. We send you emails, we reach out, so we're trying to do something alongside the brokers, but you're not responding to us. And I think what's important to recognize is they are inundated with requests for their time, and internally and externally as well. And the message was, just be persistent, right? We're not ignoring you. It's just we haven't had time to respond to you. So if an email doesn't work, pick up the phone and talk to us, if you can reach us, but keep on trying. So I think that was an important lesson that we shared. And then other areas at IHS where we'll talk to our clients about will be things like, use the conferences. Get out to, choose the right investor conferences to go to. They don't have to be broker-led, they can be, company organized, but be out there, be visible. It gives you more control which conference you go to, and then by definition, which investors you're likely to attract to these different conferences. So again, giving the power back to the company to control their engagement. So I think that's important. And then I think the other thing we'd mention again is very, very logical. If you're organising your own roadshow to the US, to Europe, perhaps for the first time, or seeing some institutions for the first time, it's a little risky if you're taking your C-suite along for the first time. So don't be afraid of organising an IR-only roadshow. I think institutions respond very well to that. It shows them that the IR community, quite rightly, has the confidence in their role, in their company. And the second meeting, you can bring your CFO or whoever is more appropriate. But I think those are some of the lessons we've learned in the UK.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That has been quite comprehensive. And as an investor, Burak, would you prefer, a sell-side analyst maybe guiding you, or do you feel uncomfortable calling the corporates that you are invested in?
Actually, the victim of MiFID was unfortunately the sell side.
Yeah.
So we had established our own research department in our own
Okay.
asset management.
So that has been your, in a way, response to...
Yeah, maybe we have been a bit proactive in that matter, and we can easily reach, since they have improved a lot, they are more receptive, we can easily reach IRs. Maybe that's natural selection, let's say, how the business has evolved in time, and unfortunately sell side is getting hit.
Yeah. So that's the fact of life, and we learn to live with that. And Özgür, how about you? The reports you've been writing, do you feel a bit, isolated? No one reads my reports. It's all going to passive. So
I mean, we have to be sticking to budget. So compared to the previous time, that how many reports that we receive and now how many reports we are receiving nowadays, there's a drastic change. But as Burak has mentioned, what we see is that I am now starting contacting directly with the IR. Luckily, I was a sell-side analyst, so I know most of the IRs are good friends of mine, which is a big advantage for me. But nevertheless, most of them, even though I don't know it, we just step in and then ask the questions directly rather than asking an analyst. So as far as I see, the MiFID brings a lot of workload to the IR as well.
it seems so. Peter, maybe you might have some color. Can you talk about, are there digital tools available for IR people to manage this sort of, especially for, well, maybe we should look from two perspectives. For more popular corporates or mostly owned companies in the listed market, it's one problem because you have many investors that you need to reach. But also for the smaller ones who are already maybe underinvested or not well known, you may need some other solution. Well, from your experience, has the competition brought in such products for companies deal with those conferences alone without any sell-side support or investment banking support?
Yeah. So the answer is yes. Obviously, there are a number of sort of digital solutions that companies use to facilitate their targeting, to give them that sort of control in-house. Obviously, we provide a solution to a number of Turkish companies, a number of European companies. There are other tools out there as well. I saw there's a survey recently by the IR magazine, a global survey looking at what tools companies use for different sort of initiatives, and 55% of global companies do have access in-house now to a form of digital targeting. Now, so there are different levels. You can spend more to get a more sophisticated tool, but the depth of data that is available now, I think we contain, our system has 165,000 buy and sell side professionals. So if you have the right technology sitting on top of that sort of repository of people information, then you can obviously provide some very, very refined targeting, and obviously that data we provide to the sell side as well. So to answer your question, yes, 55% do use tools. I think in that same survey, 23% said they didn't, but they would like to, and most of those were the smaller companies. So I think it's more of a resource or budgeting issue that you're referring to. I could talk about it all afternoon in terms of what we provide, but I think it's important to know there are a range of different solutions on the market today that mean you don't have to rely on the sell side to do the targeting. I think the most sophisticated companies will do a combination of the two. They'll use a desktop tool. Yeah. We're going to this city at this time. These are our fundamentals. This is our industry. These are the investments in our peers, and they'll perhaps bring up a list of 15 or 20. We can then develop that and make it a tighter list of 5 or whatever, and then they'll share that with their broker. Right, so they don't necessarily replace the broker. Sometimes what they want is a bit more independence to share with the broker and make sure it works for both sides. Otherwise, the danger is they see the same people time in, time out.
Okay, now I want to change the subject again. This is something In fact, in a similar forum before, I've asked this, but I really want to hear your views on whether the current IR people, especially in Turkey, are they suited to cover or update bond investors? So I know you are equity people, but at the end of the day, a company is an issuer. It could be debt issuance, it could be equities issuance, and you have other solutions in between. Do you observe it? Do you think the IR society in Turkey, the IR people, our friends, they have the necessary capabilities to address to the bond investors, Euro bond investors particularly? So maybe Özgür, I can start from you, if you have any comments on that.
Like you said, we are equity investor, but as far as I know, the IRs that I know, and the companies, and as far we know, I believe that all of them are well qualified. I mean, looking at that, since that we are valuing, equity investor is valuing the expected future versus the bond investor, which is expected to value the balance sheet structure and then let's say the short-term expectations. And since the IRs can give us a detailed information about even the future expectation, I believe that they are also well informed to give enough information to the bondholders as well.
But do you meet bond investors yourself, fixed income investors?
That's
You don't?
we don't.
Okay.
Because I'm an equity
Okay,
side analyst.
fine. Well, when I say meet, has anyone at all came to you before to ask about corporates on which maybe they're planning to invest, the Eurobonds, the Eurobond investors I meant.
No, not really.
And Burak, how does it work? So you do have fixed income funds as well, right? So
we have lots of visits from corporate bond issuers perspective. From IR's perspective, there should be not a big difference in my view,
okay.
because our IR people is capable of conveying what the investor needs.
Okay.
I mean, in equity business, it's like the strategy, future, maybe 1, 2, 3 year guidance, etc. And from bond investor point of view, it's usually related to cash flows, etc.
Yeah.
There is not much a big difference that an IR cannot cope with. So, and I believe they also get many questions about the fixed income side as well.
Okay, well, arguably bond investors, would be a bit dull compared to, equity investors. Well, I'm just telling this because you're right, it's the same logic, cash flows, etc. But maybe a bond investor would not be interested whether the companies have a very good strategy over the coming 10 years.
Who are the bond investors in Turkey? Our fixed income guys, they only knew to invest in Turkish government bonds. So
that's
it's not
correct.
a company.
Yeah.
Now they are in a position to evaluate how a company works, their cash flows, balance sheet, income statement, etc. Actually, I think IR is a better position in terms of knowledge compared to bond investors, corporate bond investors. So in Turkish, corporate bond investors were the government bond investors, actually.
That's true.
It's a relatively new phenomenon in Turkey. So they most probably they won't get any difficulty to face their questions, etc.
Peter, any comments on this?
I guess one of the big ironies is that obviously, the value of your equity held by foreign investors and your debt, often the debt is much bigger, but the equity team is significantly larger. But to your point, there's not the same need to service the debt investors. I think, what we probably observe is that, more and more IR teams are looking to companies like IHS to understand who their debt investors are. So, you can do shareholder IDs now on the debt as well as the equity side. Interestingly, some want to do, sort of debt targeting, try and find new debt investors for the future as well. So I think those are two trends we're seeing. And then again, I guess more holistically, IR departments in Turkey, Middle East, Europe, the UK, I think they're very capable of servicing the debt and the equities. Sometimes the very large teams, Vodafone and etc., will have a debt specialist, someone that is looking after it, but again, rolling up into the IR director.
Okay. Now we have. Well, I really want to ask. Do a maybe final quick tour on your views on what you expect. Again, we have an agenda which was announced on the website. So, well, let me ask this question. What would you expect from the IR people in Turkey to do better or to be differently? And how can investor days be used more effectively? And to the audience, please, this will take just 3-4 minutes. Then I'll ask the audience for your questions, please. So, Özgür, maybe we can start from you.
Time management is important, so my suggestions are: one,
It's important
collect the questions in advance, so that at least the IR will know that what are the expectations from the investors. Second, no need to talk about the financial numbers too much, especially when we go to an investor day and start listening the latest quarterly results. I mean, it's unnecessary, definitely unnecessary, because we already listened it in the teleconference. And to keep the investor, we would like to see level and to understand the broader strategy, especially in the investor days. So it would be nice to see what are the strengths as well as the weakness, and what are the challenges to overcome those weaknesses from the company. I mean, we know that not every company is perfect, so there should be some weakness as well. Yeah. To keep the investor attention, my suggestion would be, I know a steel company, they are regularly sending us a monthly bulletin, and they are disclosing the numbers about the sector and the company to understand what is the unit price as well as the unit cost changes. So as I told you, Turkish companies even hesitate to give numbers about their prices. So, but if we don't know the numbers, and if we only see your financial numbers only once in a quarter, then there will be definitely a discount on your explanations. So do not hesitate to give more numbers. You can send it regularly in monthly bulletin. Those monthly bulletin is always valuable for me. Sometimes I look at it and see that there is a trend change in steel industry. Maybe I miss it, so I have to look at it. It also includes some good comparison of the peers. So my suggestion will be a regular monthly bulletin about the sector, about the company, would be wise to keep the investor interest.
Okay, that's a bulletin for analysts, basically, a specialized bulletin. Okay, that's a good idea, really. Well, for
I may add, maybe reverse roadshows. They are quite useful to understand the company as a whole. I mean, if I visit a company's factories, facilities, meet with people, I don't come up very frequently. I don't come and call them. I know the company. I can judge myself. It's a time saving for the IR people as well. I don't bother them a lot because I know what's going on. I can vision what's going on. So it helps a lot to see the company, not to see them in a meeting room, to see how they work, how they function, what's the overall sentiment in the company.
So
the air,
so you specifically refer to a site visit as well, right?
Visits.
So
that would keep me very interested in the company.
Among the companies, the funds you run are invested, how many of them have you seen in person among the Turkish companies? I know some corporates do that from time to time, especially, just to give you the name, Petkim Sokar, because it was a new project, they put special effort to organize one. I think some banks do also when they open their technology centers, etc. I remember some investors when they were traveling into Turkey, reverse roadshow, in our own jargon, as you said, they like to see some of the branch network, and without advance notice at times. So how many of them have you visited?
My universe is about 80-85 companies
Uh-huh.
compared to our assets under management. Usually mid to large caps of Turkish stock market. So maybe over half of them I've
Oh,
seen
okay.
them. Yeah.
And Peter, any suggestions to how to improve investor days, or any
Yeah.
demands you may have from the IR people, especially here in Turkey, or
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah. No, sure. So I like the reverse roadshow concept very much. I was lucky enough to join the Russell 2020 a few years ago when they came through the region. Between them, they managed something like $13 trillion worth of assets, and they went to 3 or 4 countries in the Middle East. They got the most value out of going to a few of the company's sites, right? So, they would go to a milk manufacturer, for example, who's producing, in the middle of nowhere, but they got a real understanding of the fact it wasn't just a dirty old farm. It was actually a very, very high-tech operation run by some very, very sophisticated, experienced professionals. So I think just taking advantage either of organising your own, reverse roadshow and getting people in, or being aware of groups like the Russell 2020 when they come through, and these were 20 of the largest investors in the US that came to the region. So I think those are 2 good tips. But I do agree the reverse roadshow, if you're clearly in the right sector, is a good idea.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I'd like to turn to the audience. Any questions? Okay, so we have 5 more minutes. If you have any final comments, you can share, or I can, call the panel. So
I guess everybody's tired and looking for
it
us
looks
to
like
go.
I know that. I realized that's why.
Again, I want to stress the human touch. I mean, it's
Okay,
not all
yeah.
digital, it's not all the reports we receive. With human touch, it's very, very valuable. You can feel it in the air. It helps a lot. So interaction is a must from our point of view.
Thank you very much then. And dear panelists, thanks a lot for sharing your valuable experience over the recent years. And thank you all for coming and being here and listening to us. I'll hand over to Aslı maybe, or to you. I'm sorry for that.
Never mind. Efendim çok teşekkür ediyoruz Sayın Albert Crespin'e. Bir alkış rica ediyorum moderatörümüze. Sayın Peter Gotke bizlerle birlikteydi. Thank you very much Mr. Gotke for your kind contributions too. Sayın Burak Öztunç ve Sayın Özgür Göker de yine değerli görüşlerini paylaştılar bizlerle. Son oturumumuzda, yılın son panelinde siz değerli katılımcılarımıza da elbette çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Katılımlarınız ve katkılarınız için değişimden değer yaratmak diyerek yola çıktık bu sene ve sizlerle birlikte güzel bir etkinlik yaptığımızı düşünüyoruz. Lütfen anketlerinizi doldurunuz. Geri dönüşleriniz bizler için çok değerli. Şimdilik bizden bu kadar efendim. Seneye Zirve 2020'de inşallah görüşmek üzere. Bir kez daha katkınız ve katılımınız için teşekkür ediyoruz. İyi akşamlar efendim.